Deadpool and Wolverine has dropped in theaters. It looks to make a record-setting amount of money this weekend, so it's time to talk all the spoilers. Hi, my name is Sean, and I started this channel because I was driving everyone around me crazy talking about movies way too much. If you can relate, you're probably in the right place, and consider clicking that subscribe button. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. What did you think about Deadpool and Wolverine? What were your favorite parts? And feel free to spoil away down below in the comment section, because this is a spoiler review. If you haven't watched the movie yet, go watch the movie, then come over here and watch this. It's all spoilers. You have been warned by the title, by what I'm saying, by the thumbnail. Also, as we go into this, if you want to skip to a specific section, hear my thoughts on a specific cameo, plot point, anything like that, I got chapter markers down below. And let's get started. First topic of conversation, what are my thoughts on the movie after a second viewing, seeing it with an opening night crowd? How did my audience react to the film? And essentially, if you've seen my spoiler-free review, my feelings on the movie are pretty well solidified. No real changes in my opinion at all. I think that this is a highly entertaining film. It is absolutely an event for Deadpool, Wolverine, and Marvel in general fans, that it's not trying to have the most complex, interesting story. It's not super worried about plot cohesion. It is trying to kind of be this gift to the fans that puts a big, gigantic grin on your face, gets away with a bunch of things that you otherwise normally wouldn't be able to get away with a movie like this. But because it's Deadpool, it can get away with it. And so I absolutely ate it up the second time. My crowd ate it up at all the right moments. They broke into applause. They cheered a little bit. Nothing as passionate as some of the moments in No Way Home or the end of Avengers Endgame, but maybe a more steady stream of moments where people woohoo! Because the movie is kind of designed every 15 minutes, every 20 minutes to have one of these big cameos, a big reveal of a cost. I don't know why I'm being subtle about it. You see the mask, you get the cavalry, all that fun stuff. My audience ate all of it up. Clearly had a ton of fun with it. And what was interesting, as much as they kind of clapped whenever things happened in the movie, when the credits rolled, like dead silence, the lights come up, nobody leaves. Everyone's just waiting for the next the mid-credit scene, post-credit scene, knowing something's coming. But it's like there wasn't a moment where it felt like there was the end cheer, the celebration, anything like that. It was just like, what's next? What's next? What's next? Which was kind of fun. But all that to say that it's a movie that wanted to be an event for fans, and it absolutely delivers on that level. I've seen a little bit of the pushback on Twitter starting to come out of, vast majority of people had a great time with it, but there is a percentage of people of like, is this what movies have come to? Just reminding us of things that we like in the past, and movies that make the audience feel like they're in on an in-joke, but have nothing new to say or deliver. It's like, okay, sure. Yeah, we're doing some of this multiverse stuff. Yeah, there's the member berries. There's times you do it and it feels right and a celebration of things and it's fun. That's what this was. I don't think there's anything wrong with having movies like this, because these aren't the only movies that are getting made. Other things exist out there. If you don't want nostalgia bait, if you don't want fan service the movie, or fan service done right the movie, there's all these other things that still exist out there. There's other things in the comic book movie genre for you too. So I understand why it won't be for everybody, but I've seen a few takes that just feel like they're being so condescending towards people that did enjoy the film. Like the attack, it's not just on the film, it's like this slop for the public, feeding the pigs, and it's like, what is this take that you're just attacking people for enjoying a movie that was trying to put a smile on their face? But as for me, it put a smile on my face. I don't think at the end of the year this will be one of the best films of the year, but it will be one of the most entertaining films of the year. All right, from there, I'm gonna kind of basically walk through the movie and somewhat in chronological order talk through the things that I had thoughts about or that people have asked about, all of that sort of thing. We'll kick it off with the cold open. Now, the Deadpool movies are famous for having these very creative credit sequences. The first movie It starts off and it's this slow-mo bit where all the credits, you realize that it's a joke making fun of the person being credited. The second movie did the fantastic Celine Dion song, which was a ton of fun. And for this movie, it kicks off with this kind of cold open, playing off the fact that the movie knows the general audience's perspective of the film that they're watching, that it only took 2 years to get Deadpool 2, and then it's taken 6 years to get Deadpool 3. There was the merger. There's kind of questions, what's going on here? Will it be watered down? And then they announced that they're going to bring back Wolverine after everyone universally agrees Logan was the perfect send-off. Hugh Jackman said he was done. He's never returning. And then they announced he's coming back for a comedy, essentially. And so the movie kicks off going like, how are we going to honor, well, acknowledging all the issues and acknowledging the fact that Deadpool was a movie that almost like barely came into existence and then was a massive hit, and then that people want more and they're demanding more. And then they start like, how are we going to honor the legacy of Logan? This great send-off. Will we do anything to defile that memory? The movie kicks off as irreverent and like, let's just do as insulting of a thing as you can do after that. We will literally dig up Logan's bones, make a joke out of the fact that he has adamantium bones that would still be nice and pristine even after all the flesh has rotten away, and then proceed to have Wolverine rip his bones to pieces to use each piece as a weapon to kill TVA agents in hilarious fashion. Like, comedy, by its nature, is supposed to be transgressive, push boundaries, subversive, do the unexpected. So they know that they need to toe the line, be careful in how they deal with following up Logan. How are we going to do that? We're going to full as hard as we can without quite literally like peeing on his grave or something like that. Without peeing on the grave, we're going to push the boundaries of like, ha ha, let's use his rotten corpse as a weapon, ripping it to shreds. I'll take it. I think it worked for just so irreverent. And we'll get into this later on, but where the movie goes, it's entirely playing off the fact that there are universes being pruned by the passage of time and the Fox-Disney merger, as well as just something coming to an end because it wasn't working anymore. And so it's able to make the joke, but the movie as a whole also wants to honor those things that came before. Of course, the other thing we have to talk about with our intro breaks into NSYNC's Bye Bye Bye. So we're saying goodbye to the Fox X-Men universe. We've said goodbye to Logan. We've said goodbye to these franchises. And then Deadpool dances upon Logan's grave while singing to Bye Bye Bye. Only Deadpool can get away with that. Only Deadpool do you go into the movie like, that's what I signed up for. That is what I'm expecting from this movie, is utter irreverence. The word I used way too many times in my spoiler-free review, and I'm sure I will use way too many times in this review as well, but such utter irreverence. But the thing that I think won a lot of us over is that while it leans so heavily into irreverence, it also wants to revere the same things that it's being irreverent towards. Then we have Deadpool's arc and our first big cameo in here, Happy Hogan. So the movie cuts straight from our let's desecrate the dead, grave of the dead, to what's Deadpool been up to, what has got to this point in time, what's established all of this. And the basic idea is that after the events of the last film, Deadpool's trying to find meaning, trying to settle down a little bit to win his lady's affection, have some stability, not just be the total Joker, just killing people. And to make this point, he wanted to join the Avengers in the sacred timeline. So it doesn't try to go to any sort of effort to try to explain exactly how the nature of the timeline jumping, besides he has a time turner. But suddenly we're in 616, sacred timeline, and it's happy. It's right there. They're just like, we're going to do the cameo game. We're in the sacred timeline. It's happy. And we are pre-Infinity War with Deadpool showing up, trying to join the team. And maybe if he'd been allowed to join the team, we could have avoided this whole Thanos snap thing. But he's not allowed in. So we have Deadpool, and fun little bit filled with fourth wall breaking references to Robert Downey Jr., making fun of Happy, the whole deal, but establishing Deadpool's desire for significance. This is where the kind of comparisons to the No Way Home kind of come in for me, of like, you have movies that they exist to be fan service the movie. Very good fan service the movie. But you're trying to find some mechanism to make them thematically cohesive, that you have an arc for our lead character that you can kind of latch onto, that understand their emotional journey. Is it the most compelling if you stop to think about what on earth is going on here? Not really. In the case of No Way Home, everything happens over college admissions, and here so much happens because Deadpool shows up cold to interview to join the Avengers and doesn't get in. It implies other things happen with X-Men, and other rejections happen too, but the symbol that they show is Avengers. But like, it's played as a joke. Like, the whole thing that's supposed to be the emotional anchor, that he's just thrown off his game because he's rejected by the Avengers. It's also a joke scenario of like, obviously you don't show up to Avengers Tower or wherever Happy's at with your resume and do a typical interview to try and get in. Like, that's a joke, but they use the joke as the anchor for the whole thing. And, you know, that to me, where you have a movie that, does it work on a comedy level? Absolutely. Does it work on a fan service level? Absolutely. Does it work on an emotional level? Absolutely. But if you remove the fan service, if you remove all the things that are like the icing on the outside, the thing at the core is like, kind of like taping this thing together. But so then we see he's got a job as a car salesman, and it's his birthday, and all of his people from the previous movie are his best friends in the whole world. Some of them obviously been more established than others. Some are like cameos that like the actor didn't have anything better to do, so he still showed up to the birthday party, or they showed up to the birthday party. But, you know, he's lonely, he's down on his luck, and he's broken up with his lady friend, and he's bummed out looking for purpose. And in the midst of this context, he's whisked away. So all of this establishes our journey. It's all very heavy-handed. That's like the rule. Deadpool is a comedy, so the rules of a comedy are different. So it's tricky when you take in the middle of your otherwise fairly serious franchises. All of them have comedy, but this one plays by the rules of a comedy. And you put the comedy story in the middle of it, I think inherently you have a story that's less serious, even though you're trying to put emotional weight on it. That'll bring us to the TVA and Paradox. So this kicks off our main storyline as we see kind of Deadpool in a low spot, bummed out by not having purpose, having people around him, but not having the love of his life. Or knowing what to do and not really looking to do more. The TVA shows up to take him off, and Paradox, one of our main villains, informs him that he does have a higher purpose, that he's needed for the Avengers. We get a montage, sets up the Chris Evans joke by having a bunch of images of Captain America, so it opens the Captain America file in your brain. It establishes that Deadpool knows of Chris Evans as Captain America, so setting things up. But we also have Deadpool see Thor holding his dying body, and they keep telling him, you have a higher purpose, you're necessary for what's to come, which theoretically, in the scheme of the MCU, I'm guessing means they're planning on using him in one of our two next Avengers movies, or both of our next Avengers movies, if they're connected strongly. If they're loosely connected, I'm assuming just for Secret Wars. But he is, as he says, Marvel Jesus. He has this big higher purpose. And once again, this is kind of where you have a arc and conflict that you come up with something that needs no explanation whatsoever. Who needs Deadpool? Well, the higher-ups. What is he for? Something in the future. Is that explained in this movie? No. And it followed up in this movie? No. But it is a tease to the very simplistic arc we've given Deadpool, which is he feels like he doesn't have a purpose, as symbolized by being rejected by the Avengers, and then now he's being invited to join the Avengers. Why is it the Avengers on the sacred timeline? Well, so we can pull it into the MCU. What's the logic here? How does this all tie together? No explanation. No, like, it's just happening. This is what, for the plot to happen, for the emotional arc to work, for the thematic cohesion, we just have to go along with it. That is the suspension of disbelief that is required here. Of course, we know we're going to break the fourth wall. We already suspended that disbelief in the first movie. The suspension of disbelief here is a plot where you just kind of have to go along with it. Just happens. It happens. You're needed for what? I don't know. I guess. Well, that's probably why they're taking so long to get a writer-director team for the next 2 Avengers movies, because they're trying to figure out what to do with Deadpool. We know it's going to be important, though, supposedly. No answer given, no explanation, but thematic cohesion, character arc cohesion, emotional arc in the film, it works on that level. And then we get the follow-up on this that, well, your timeline is we've lost its anchor point, Wolverine, Logan, so you now are stepping up, like, we need you for this other thing. All of it, it's just so the plot can take place. There's nothing is explained. Nothing whatsoever is explained. Even like the understanding of the plot of Logan and it's where in the timeline is it, there's kind of implications. It's down the line a little bit. And now all of a sudden we're saying it took place in the year that the movie was released. By implication, that was the anchor point. Like, there's a lot of like logic of like, how does this doesn't feel like these pieces fit with the world of mutants as described in the movie Logan does not fit with the world of Deadpool as we understand it. So like disconnects here of on the logic level if you stop to think about it. But whole idea is that, all right, Deadpool, we'll give you the thing you've always wanted, the purpose, everything, but it will cost you everything that you care about as well as your world. Though you're going to lose your world anyway. And then adding to this, we have our main villain, Paradox. I think he's fun. Like, this movie's only kind of joke villains, that they're more about their shenanigans than being like this deeply compelling villain. And for what it is, he works as this sniveling career man trying to make a name for himself in the TVA. And, callously like snipping away at universes just to build his own career, just doing it faster than he needs to be more efficient and make his point. He works. He's fun on screen. He like his snootiness plays well against Deadpool and Ryan Reynolds' irreverence. And once again, all of this works better on a thematic level than on a story level of like, what? The TVA just has branches that can kind of go rogue. And even the way the third act plays out, you're like, the TVA couldn't send people to stop what was going on. They're like just sitting there like watching the screens like, what are we going to do? And then they show up afterwards to investigate. Like this guy's motivation. I just want a promotion. I want to show him a better way to do this. So a world's going to be destroyed 2,000 years before it needs to without exploring any other options here. It's like false urgency. It's, all kind of fabricated. That's why when I say the movie doesn't have a particularly strong story in and of itself, that's what I'm referring to. But on a thematic level, this is where there's some really smart stuff, intelligent stuff going on in the movie. Because what the film is doing is it's playing around with the Fox X-Men universe is dead. And we're saying there's universes out there that are dead and they're being pruned off. That happened in the merger. They ran themselves into the ground, they got rebooted, or Disney acquired all this stuff. So they're getting pruned off. Let's take that idea and make that the plot of the movie. That the Fox X-Men universe is going to be completely erased, pruned out of the multiverse because of corporate people trying to make a name for themselves. It has its own commentary. Like, you know, Disney making this commentary is very peculiar, but the storytellers are able to comment on this a little bit. When we get into some of our cameos in the middle of the film, you're talking about people that they had their little run and then they got rebooted out. They got forgotten. They got passed along for these other continuities. And so we're tying into that. So this idea of trying to save timelines so that they can continue to exist in our multiverse, there's something about that does have like a really smart, bigger picture to it, that while the movie is mocking Fox, mocking all these projects that didn't happen, that ended abrupt, all that, it makes fun of all of it. And then at the same time, it wants to celebrate them. And let's make a plot line about creating a scenario where we are able to save them. They're still out there in the multiverse. They can come back in Secret Wars. That is what this movie does well. And that's where there's something here that's a little bit smarter than some people are giving the movie credit for. But so then Deadpool goes off on his adventure in the multiverse. Then we got our Wolverine montage as Deadpool heads out to try and find a Wolverine for his timeline. They do this montage sequence that, once again, this is the sort of thing that people wanted in Multiverse of Madness, but if you stop and think about it, I just don't think you could do it in Multiverse of Madness and get away with it, because that's supposed to be a horror film. And that's even the disconnect in the film a little bit, is like, one moment you're doing, hey, look, it's John Krasinski, Mr. Fantastic, and the next minute we're doing a horror movie where Wanda's just ripping dudes, including Mr. Fantastic, apart. And so we're doing something that is very like wink at the audience and then doing something shocking, and they don't neatly go together all that well. And there's only so much winking at the audience you can do in a movie before that's all your movie is. Well, Deadpool, by its nature, has always been a wink at the audience franchise. So doing multiverse, hopping through all of these comedically comic accurate situations, well, that fits perfectly with Deadpool. It's a continuation of the joke that's always been there, that it's always broken the fourth wall. It's always quite literally had him staring at the camera, talking to the audience, sometimes even winking at the audience directly. So in that context, you can do this bit where we're taking iconic, classic X-Men covers, and that's one of the places we stop by. We're going, all right, what are all the fun criticisms of Wolverine as he's been portrayed? As much as everybody loves Hugh Jackman, he's a foot too tall to play Wolverine. So what does comic accurate Hugh Jackman Wolverine look like? There is short guy. They've never done the comic accurate costume, any of the costumes. So let's kind of go through and we'll get to see all these different versions. And then we'll have these deep cut jokes. Wait, that's the costume you wore when you fought Hulk. Cameo for Hulk. Hulk shows up. It's a joke, but it's a smart joke for people that know the comics. And even if you feel like you're in on the joke if you've seen the cover before, if you've seen that costume before, if you've read that arc before, if you've seen that cartoon before, you feel like you're in on the joke, but you don't need to be in on the joke to have fun with the situation. Like, no matter if you didn't know that that's the costume he wore when he fought Hulk, it's still fun to see Hulk show up and punch him. The sequence still works, whether you're in on the joke or not. It's broadly accessible, but also extraordinarily niche at the same time, which in and of itself is a pretty impressive thing to be able to do that degree of broad appeal niche at the exact same time, in the same moment. In my spoiler-free review, I talked about what do you need to watch in advance to understand this movie? Like, legitimately, you can go in without having seen anything, and as long as you just have a general knowledge of Marvel, you can have a ton of fun with the film and understand what's going on and laugh at a lot of the jokes and have fun with it. But like the whole movie, every scene has so many little in-jokes to it that the more you know about the behind the scenes, the more you know about the comics, there's just little things hidden. At the end of the movie, the store that they're knocked into is Liefeld. Rob Liefeld created Deadpool. Like, it's like all these little bits all throughout the movie. There's like little jokes, like interactions between Deadpool and Blade, that if you do not know the backstory of Blade Trinity, the joke goes over your head. It makes sense in the moment, but it goes over your head. And so there's just all of this stuff that's so deeply specific, but still works if you don't know all the specific niche things. And of course, the big payoff of this whole bit, Cavalry. Where you see this guy on a motorcycle, looks jacked Wolverine. You want, who's this going to be? Turns around, and it is Henry Cavill. And so they're not just doing comic ones. They're not just making jokes about the costumes, comic accurate height, the eye patches, old man Logan. We're also like, what are all the bizarre fan casts? Let's do like one of these fan casts. Who gets fan casts for everything? Henry Cavill, and we got to see the Cavalry, and it was fun. They actually pulled it off. Then we gotta talk about Hugh Jackman as Wolverine and his character arc. So, Hugh Jackman has said he was done with the character. It was such a perfect send-off. And in recent interviews, basically what he said is that he made the announcement, I'm done with Wolverine. Logan is going to be my last movie. And then 3 days later, he saw Deadpool. And he went, oh crap, did I screw up? Because I can think of a lot of fun to do with that. Like, this is perfect. And I just said I'm done. And then, it took 6 years after that, he's finally like, all right, I'm going to come back and I'm going to do it. And so they're trying to figure out how on earth do we not actually undo the Logan finale, but give Hugh Jackman more to do as Wolverine. So we give this multiverse version of Logan that is regarded to be the worst Wolverine, where he's a Wolverine that didn't turn out to be everyone's favorite X-Men hero. He is the guy that ruined the reputation of the X-Men, where, as the movie discusses, Wolverine is never the right guy until he is. And he's always the reluctant hero, holding back. He doesn't think he's good enough. He's too broken. He's too traumatized until he chooses to be the hero. And so we take that idea, which is essentially the classic Wolverine arc that we've seen kind of play out repeatedly. Of course, the first X-Men movie, but then you see it essentially kind of repeated in X-Men Origins Wolverine. You see it even repeated in Logan, where he's playing dad to Chucky X in a silo or whatever, keeping him safe from everyone else. And he has to be pulled back in. He's always that reluctant hero, but then when he's called to action, he delivers. And so they do that once again, but like, let's have a really, really bad version of Logan that has repeatedly failed to step up. And in fact, in his rage about the loss of his friends, goes and murders a bunch of people. So he's actually a villainous Wolverine that is a monstrous killer with deep regret over being a failure as a hero and turning into the monster that ruined the reputation of the X-Men. Recent years, or recent months really been pretty critical of how there have been a number of kind of deconstructions of classic heroes, in particular by Lucasfilm, and taking these hopeful heroes, making them sad old men that are broken heroes and need a redemption. And so a number of people ask me, how do you apply that logic to Logan, where they keep showing him as a broken hero, reluctant hero, old, tired, having to be pulled back in? What's the difference? And I think the fundamental difference is that Logan, that's inherent to the character, is deep trauma. That's always supposed to be there. He's never supposed to be happy-go-lucky Wolverine. He's not Luke Skywalker. That is like the most hopeful, like, I got this. I'm going to go charge after Darth Vader. I can save my dad. That's never been who Wolverine is. He's always been a cynic. He's always been broken. He's always had trauma. Tragedy has always surrounded him. Death has always surrounded him because he doesn't die. Therefore, everyone that he knows, he will outlive. Until Logan. And so there's just, that soaks the character, that there's this reluctance, a pain there. And also, what they tend to do when they do this Wolverine, they always keep some element of truth to his character. So in this one, one of the big selling points early on with the film was like, look, he's in the yellow costume, which the reason they haven't done the yellow costume prior to now is because it's very silly looking in live action, because it just bright colors. It doesn't like make a lot of sense. They even, crack jokes. Mine's red, so you can't see the blood. Yours is yellow, so I guess that makes sense too. Like they crack jokes about it, but like there's a reason that it's like tough to imagine the bright yellow, and you can dupe it in this film, but like they make it like, why are you still wearing the suit? Why do you have that on your suit? And it ties into this fact that this is like, this suit represents his greatest trauma, but also his greatest desire to be worthy of the suit. And so that's so true to the character of this person wanting to be a better person. And then they continue that throughout the film, and I'm sure we'll talk about later in the video, but like that journey is what makes the film compelling and have that emotional arc and payoff for everything, is playing out this sort of new version of the origin story for Wolverine. For this version of Wolverine, this is the time that he steps up through Deadpool, through Lauren, through this quest. He becomes the X-Men that he always wanted to be, that he failed to be before, that he becomes the sacrificial hero that can move on past his holdups. You get that in this film. Other thing that's so important about Hugh Jackman in this movie is that he's able to bring a sincerity that Ryan Reynolds can't really bring. In movies that he's done dramatic roles, like Ryan Reynolds can dramatically act. But as Deadpool, when you have a character that just jokes so much and that he's always on the verge of literally winking at the camera and nothing's off limits, there's a couple moments where it's like, these are the 9 people, are the only people that I care about, where you have that's the serious moment. You can see a sadness in his eyes, but he's always about to make another joke. And what Hugh Jackman is able to bring is just this utter sincerity in so many moments. Even when they're in the car and he goes off on Deadpool and just like this 1-minute tirade, ripping this guy to shreds. In kind of Hugh Jackman said he wanted to make like a Planes, Trains, and Automobiles comic book movie with these two characters. This is the Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. We have the moment where Steve Martin goes off on John Candy, and you have Hugh Jackman go off on him, and he's saying these funny things, but he's saying it in such a like actually hurtful and mean way where you feel it, what he's saying, like, oh man, he's going for, and you the way they're able to make whatever they do with the mask to make the eyes move and stuff to emote, like you see that he's hitting close to home and you feel it. But all these other times in the movies where Deadpool mouths off and gets Johnny Storm killed, and then the response from Hugh Jackman, it is funny. Like, you got him killed, you idiot. It's funny, but at the same time, you believe it. And so these moments of his character just sitting there in torment, reflecting on the past, or reflecting on Johnny Storm dying, or making these statements in the midst of all of it, you believe him. And that, I think, is the more effective emotional anchor for this film. It's Hugh Jackman that's just that good, that he can be funny and have funny lines. He can play great off Ryan Reynolds, but in the middle of all the silliness, even in the middle of like dark humor joke about people dying and getting skinned alive, he can bring the oomph to it. Something genuine that you believe, which is like, if you want drama to work, you have to be able to believe it. And it's too much of a joke with Ryan Reynolds, and it's supposed to be. And he's great at that. Hugh Jackman is able to balance that so well and give that anchor. So then we end up in our multiverse junkyard, and we get the fight sequence that was heavily featured in the set photos leaked from literally a year ago, prominently featured in the trailers. And this is, I thought this was pretty impressive, the way that, I wonder if they even did this intentionally, but you have several different characters, jokes, bits clearly leaked out of this fight in front of the Fox logo. So get the set photo of the Fox logo sticking out of the ground. We're like, oh man, why'd they spoil that? And then we see Sabretooth. Oh man, why'd they spoil that? They show Pyro, and we're like, oh man, why'd they spoil that? And so they have all these things that are cameos or are very clear meta jokes, why'd you spoil that? We get the fun fight that they prominently showed in the trailers, that we literally saw Hugh Jackman lifting Deadpool up in the air and a year ago in these set photos. We saw so much of it. But the big payoff bit in all of this wasn't in any set photos. It wasn't in any of this. I don't know if they shot that in the warehouse. They shot it somewhere different so that you wouldn't know about it, or if they were just really smart about manipulating audiences and the guys with the telescopic lenses. But they were able to make us go, oh man, we've already seen everything in there. We've already seen the spoilers. We've already seen the cameos. And then the big one plays out where you have a voice and you hear it and you go, that sounds familiar. And then you see blue sleeves, a little bit of red, teasing Captain America costume. They showed a Captain America shield on the ground. And so then they prime your brain with the earlier scene to think it's going to be Captain America. It's just Chris Evans. He falls down. It's Chris Evans' hero pose. And they have pyro pull up. And like, I wasn't expecting Steve Rogers to show up in this movie as Chris Evans. Like, if they had, like, was it Matt Salinger, 1990s Captain America, son of J.D. Salinger, the writer of The Catcher in the Rye, they had him show up as Captain America, like, I would have believed that. So, do something like that. I don't know how many people would get the joke. I would, but I don't know how many people would get the joke. But they do that. But you're going to have Chris Evans return as an MCU character, because that's not actually interesting. We want it to be a joke. So a joke is, let's subvert expectations. You build up classic MCU character. It's Chris Evans, Captain America, one of our like little top stars of the MCU ever. Pyro shows up. Like I said, I went into this pretty sure if we get Chris Evans, it's going to be Human Torch, because that's funny, that's interesting, that's what you would do here. Pyro shows up. Pyro, Human Torch. I was like, okay, I don't know what they're going to do with Pyro and him, but whatever it is, it's going to be Human Torch. And so he's going to say the line, like he's about to say flame on, and he says flame on. Both times I saw the movie, the theater like erupted. Woo-hoo! Went nuts as he flies up into the sky. And then they have him, Pyro sucks the flames out of him, he falls down and makes a joke of him. I'm glad they didn't kill him right there. If they'd done that, it would have been too much multiverse of madness. It pretty well close to does that, because we kill him off soon enough afterwards anyway. But that they at least gave him a bit more time and didn't just, John Krasinski him and rip him up and, Chucky X Multiverse of Madness snap his neck after 30 seconds of screen time. We get a little bit more time with him, but so it's kind of fun. And I think that's one of the things that this one provided the cameo fest that people wanted, because you can do Chris Evans as Human Torch, but he's also surrounded by people that aren't all that interesting, but they make it feel filled with cameos, because it kind of is. When you have Pyro, you have Sabretooth, you have a new Juggernaut, and we get a joke about every movie has a different Juggernaut. What are the red Nightcrawler, I'm blanking on Azrael, something like that. Whatever's black, red and black, Nightcrawler, hopping all around. Like we get just glimpses of these people that, in and of themselves, it's not a super compelling cameo, but as just more faces in there. That when you look in the crowd, there's a couple more cameos in there, and you can put those in the trailer without spoiling the ones people are actually excited about. Does that nicely. So we'll get to dive in on our other villain in just a little bit, but we get there and you get some scenes of, Chris Evans giving exposition and then him dying a horrible death. That I was wondering, are they really going to keep him in a good chunk of the movie, or is he's going to be killed off pretty soon? And I think they treated it for an ongoing running joke throughout the movie that Deadpool got him killed, and then they pay it off with the post-credit scene. But I think when you do something that big and feel like you don't really do anything with it, there's always a sense of feeling a little bit cheated by it. That's why the Illuminati and Multiverse of Madness felt like a cheat. And then you get into this one, Chris Evans, he's Human Torch. Oh man, what are we going to do with this? Oh, Deadpool got him killed mouthing off. I think there's a little bit of a cheat there, but of course it's fun that we got to see him and we get a joke about him eating up the budget. Then we talk about our other main villain, Cassandra Nova, and it's another one where it's kind of a fun concept for a villain. We get some bits here. As for the actual villain scheme or whatever, it's like all an afterthought, where you have someone that rules over this realm, and so she's an obstacle to them getting out of there, as well as potentially the help to get them out of there. But like, it's all just kind of, oh yeah, I just happen to have this thing in my pocket. Like, she just happens to have the thing. There's not like a super compelling explanation here, even as to why she's so evil and villainous. They repeatedly make the point, oh, well, she's just evil. What's the motivation? There is none. She's just twisted. And so she has a fun, wacky, evil personality. She is a character with very undefined powers, except to say if you put the helmet on, she can't use her powers, but otherwise, whatever. She can do all kinds of stuff. She has a ring in her pocket, so she has sorcerer powers, all of that stuff. So she's fun in the movie. She served her purpose, but in this greater scheme of like memorability, impact, compelling plot, it's another character that served the plot of the movie we're watching. You know, let's pick a character that has an undefined power set that can do whatever the movie plot needs her to do, but also ties to Professor X, so we can have just enough of emotional hook to it. We can have enough of that visual comparison to Charles with the baldness, all of this. But there's not a ton there that's like actually interesting. You know, she's evil, so she doesn't want to help them and might want to kill them. Okay, cool. And then she just happens to have a Doctor Strange ring. Cool. Not super interesting. And then even as we move into the third act and she's trying to destroy the fabric of the universe, this isn't something that was set up in any meaningful way earlier in the film that has greater impact for anything. It's just like, oh yeah, and then she's trying to do this. It just kind of happens. Like, we just happenstance into, now we're not just trying to save this universe, we're trying to save all the universes. It just happens. Doesn't mean anything. So that's what I talk about, like a weak, forgettable story. It's that all of this just serves for the gags, for the themes, for the emotional arc. It's not cohesive on its own. It doesn't make a lot of sense on its own. If you remove the icing that is cameos and the sprinkles is Wolverine, all that stuff, and you just go play this story out, it doesn't make it, it's no good, like at all. Then real quick, we'll just kind of talk about the road trip part of the movie, where you get into the middle of it, and we get our two characters kind of off doing their road trip. It's not super long, it's not super compelling, but this was kind of the pitch for the film of these two guys on a road trip, where they literally ride a rocket, Looney Tunes style, out of the fight, land, go in a diner, they run into Nice Pool, and then all of a sudden we have a car and we're driving around and they're bickering. And the whole point was, let's create a scenario where for a stretch of the movie, we just get to see them go at it. And Deadpool's mouthiness with Wolverine's crankiness. And the crankiest of Wolverines, just going at it, bickering. That's fun. That's why the movie exists, for this stuff. And pretty much all of it worked for me. Whether we're talking to Nice Pool and having a super grin-heavy Ryan Reynolds holding a hideous/adorable dog while this dog licks our Deadpool in the mouth, while we make Honda Odyssey jokes, have them fighting, eat in a diner, guy drinking, rubbing alcohol, all of it just kind of works. Like, just all the banter. And also, like, you watch the trailers, there's even more bits. Like, when they put it on Blu-ray, we're probably going to get 10 minutes of extended cut that's just more banter. Them in the diner, joking around, alternate gags, all of that fun stuff. Because that's what this movie was. Just a whole lot of that. Them bickering, them bantering. And it was fun. Then we gotta talk about Cameo Fest 2024. We're rescued, or not rescued, we're picked up after they beat each other up, put into this hut in the middle of nowhere with the other rebels that they happen to be able to find them nice and neatly. And we get our big cameo reveals, the big ones that we're going for here, and do this big reveal, and Jennifer Garner as Elektra is standing there. Now, this is one of the ones that was reported a year and a half ago that she was going to be in the film, like confirmed. It seemed to have stronger indicators that this one was real. And that's where, there's like 1,000 reports as to who was going to be in this movie, but that one seemed to have a little bit more. Oh, she's in the movie. And she's legitimately in the movie. Like, she's in a whole 30-minute stretch of the film, has dialogue. They have a big fight. They matter to the story. And she's in the film. Of our cameos in this section, hers is probably the least interesting of sorts, where if you're able to get Ben Affleck as your Daredevil cameo, there's a lot more material there because Ben Affleck went on to become Batman, because Daredevil has been rebooted. There's more jokes to be made. I'm guessing he just didn't want to do it. I think it is a lot of fun to see Elektra there, and not to have all of the people that show up be the opportunity to be made fun of. So you get like a joke in there of like, Daredevil got killed off. And then they cut to her going, I don't mind that one. And they're like, whoa, they just made a joke about, there's actually multiple jokes about people's real world divorces in this movie, but they go pretty hard on it. And just like taking someone that Elektra, her movie is one of the most forgotten Marvel movies, but she starred in a Marvel movie. There's a movie called Elektra, directed by Rob Bowman, legendary X-Files director, that nobody went to go see. And so they put that in here. And so that was nice. And we'll get into it just a little bit, but the thematic where they're going with this, I think, is where it makes the cameos that they picked, I think, extra special. So then we get Blade. And I adore Blade. I saw all 3 movies in the theater opening weekend when they came out. I rewatched them regularly. I even have a soft spot in my heart for Blade Trinity. It's a very enjoyable bad movie in my mind. But the thing that, like, there's all these little jokes that are subtle references in it to the production of Blade Trinity, which, if you do not know, Ryan Reynolds is in Blade Trinity as a character named Hannibal King, who is basically a prototype for Deadpool. He's a very mouthy character. It's Ryan Reynolds doing Ryan Reynolds. It's Wade Wilson pre being hideous. That's basically what Hannibal King is. So if you want a little bit more of Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, but technically not Deadpool, watch Blade Trinity and you get a bunch of it. And in the movie, Blade hates Hannibal King because he's so mouthy and annoying. Also, it's well reported that Wesley Snipes was very unhappy with the production of the film because he felt like his movie was being taken away from him and being given to the Night Stalkers, the Jessica Biel and Ryan Reynolds, Patton Oswalt. They were getting the focus on his movie, so he was resentful, he was mad at the director, there's all this stuff. So Wesley Snipes supposedly did not like Ryan Reynolds, and Blade did not like Hannibal King. There's this little line in there where Blade goes, I don't like you. And then Deadpool goes, you've never really liked me. Which, if you know the backstory, if you've seen Blade Trinity, is a really funny joke. And it just happens. It's like, drops it in there. Like this joke for insiders. That's what these inside jokes, there's so many things like that. When I said in my, like, the more movies you've watched, the more jokes you will get here, that's what I mean. You can understand this movie just fine without having seen Blade Trinity or knowing the background. However, so many lines like that, they're just like a reference, an in-joke for people that know this stuff really well. Blade was my favorite cameo. Without, like, not even close, like, different category for, well, I don't know. The Gambit's way up there, too. Those are, like, that's good stuff in my mind. So doing Blade and then having all these, like, jokes where, we've had like 5 Punishers. There's only ever been one Blade, and there only ever will be one Blade. Like, saying that while in the press tour, Kevin Feige's like, we're working on the script, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. And then in the movie, Wesley Snipes says, there's only ever going to be me. Like, that's great. That's fantastic. That is so much fun. And they keep referencing all these Punishers. I wonder if, like, Thomas Jane just didn't want to do it. I wonder, like, also Dolph Lundgren was a Punisher. So there's several things you could have done with this one. I don't know exactly when they filled it versus when Ray passed away, if that would have been an option, but they didn't have Punisher. I would have loved to have seen Punisher, even to the point of what they're making. If you have Thomas Jane there and you cracking jokes about him being rebooted multiple times afterward, like there's a bunch you can do with that. So I would have dug that, but obviously they just referenced a few of these additional characters that they're kind of out there. Then the other big one in here was Gambit. Another deep cut insider moment where for years they were trying to make a Gambit movie starring Channing Tatum. And it like kept almost happening, new writers, new directors, and it just kept going and going and going, and then the merger happened and it was killed. And so it was always one of these projects that people were like, Channing Tatum is Gambit? Can he do the accent? Is this I don't know if this is a good idea. So then they do it, and they do comic accurate costume. They have Channing Tatum do this most extreme, exaggerated, over-the-top accent to play into the joke of Channing Tatum can't do the accent. And then as they're talking about the multiverse and everything, they keep like, I think I was born here. I don't even remember my world because the movie never happened. And like, they keep making all these jokes about the movie never getting made, which are just inside cuts for people that know what's kind of going on here. And then if Daphne Keane return as X-23, and that one was in the trailer, so you knew it was kind of coming. And you know, that one seemed like one that was pretty obvious that you do something with that to follow up Logan. She's used as more of a emotional arc. She closes out Logan, Wolverine's. She's a pivotal piece in getting him to be who he needs to be, saying the right words to him at the right time. So just, it's nice to see her, but I don't think that one wasn't as like, wow, and it's not designed to be as wow. It's designed to be a much more personal character one, since she's coming out of Logan and you don't want to make a joke out of Logan. And I think that worked nicely. But I think what these cameos did, and where they go with their arc, they literally give the cameos an arc. Their arc is to give their universes one final hurrah. Like, we can't save the Daredevil Elektra continuity. We can't save the Wesley Snipes Blade movie. We can't bring them back. They're not sticking around in the MCU. They're going to be rebooted, but we can give them one last hurrah. We can give them one last shout out that we can fight so that your timeline can exist. And so that's that meta commentary built into it of, yeah, the merger happened and they're getting pruned and things are being eliminated, but what if we got that one last hurrah? We can do that. We can fight for your universe. There's something to that that's kind of nice. That's like, all right, yeah, like we're saying goodbye, but we're getting a last hurrah. We're getting one more little fight. Thought that was nice. And then, you know, in the battle, all of them survive. All of them defeat the bad guys. Each of them gets their little moment to do something cool. You know, Blade says the line. You get Gambit with the cards, taking a whole roll of guys out. X-23 taking out Juggernaut. Elektra taking guys out with the size. So they get their final payoff. And while you see them standing there as Alioth comes in to wipe the whole deal out, it's also implied at the end of it that they're saved. That we can see them again in Secret Wars, or that while in the moment they were willing to sacrifice themselves for another universe to give it a chance, they also hinted, I mean, we have X-23 show up at the end of the film, so we saved her, implied that the others can be saved as well. So I think there's a lot of that was kind of nice. That'll bring us to the final battle, the Battle of the Deadpools, and in our movie, jam-packed with cameos. Of course, we have to end with a cameo, wink at the audience, final battle. So they arrive there, and Cassandra Nova calls up her friends, the Deadpools, to show up to try and stop them. They have no motivation. They are just stopping Deadpool because we need a final battle. We want one final gag. And so, you know, we get, you know, Nice Pool shows up and gives them the exposition that they need. And then basically we just prepare for war after Deadpool gets Nice Pool killed horribly, so he can get his guns. Understandable. But then Right before it happens, they walk out. Like a Prayer starts playing. Wolverine, finally, 24 years. After 24 years, they save him for the end of the movie, and he puts the mask on. The mask looks very silly. There's a reason that they haven't done it. There's no way to do that without it looking silly in live action, because like with the white eyes and everything like that, it's pretty wacky and wild to see something like that. But in this context, it looks fantastic. My woo! Start clapping when the mask comes on, and we have all the Battle of the Deadpool. So we get Lady Deadpool. Seemed like a bunch of people really wanted that to be a big reveal. Like I even had like one of my wife's friends texted my wife like, "Can you tell me who it is? What's the big reveal there?" The credits say that it's Blake Lively. I'm sure there's just the voice of Blake Lively. She wasn't actually in the costume. There's no like, take the mask off. It's Taylor Swift or it's Blake Lively, and you know, Deadpool makes out with himself. Like there's some things you could have done there that I guess they either decided not to, or it would cheapen. Like that's one gag they couldn't find a way to make it work or whatever. But you know, it technically was Blake Lively credited to playing Lady Deadpool, but there's no reveal there. Matthew McConaughey's another one, Nathan Fillion one. So just all these wacky different versions. They don't have a motivation. They're just being told, battle the Wolverine and Deadpool. So we have a big fight, this long take as they battle. It's a fun sequence because of the song playing. It's cartoonish. It doesn't make a ton of sense that even if you watch the choreography, you have all these guys with, 100 guys with machine guns and swords standing there waiting to do a melee fight with them. It's making a lot of sense, but it is a lot of fun. Bloodshed, limbs flying everywhere, carnage, and then, they fly through it. Of course, you get the big joke right after the iconic shot. Deadpool falls down. It's fun. Once again, this is where I talk about the story not being the movie's strong point. The final battle in this movie is justified by 2 throwaway lines of dialogue in the movie. Nicepool says, "Oh, you don't want to mess with the Deadpools. They're crazy and they don't like you." And then Cassandra Nova goes, "I'll call up some friends to stop them." That's the full setup for the final battle in this movie. That's it. Like, it's just a throwaway bit to be able to have this gag. It's a good gag. It's a fun gag. Once again, you remove the novelty of the gag, and it's just not interesting storytelling. Maybe that works for the film, but to be clear, that's what we're referring to here of, like, there are movies that are highly entertaining, but also have a more cohesive story to them. This is not one of them. It is just highly entertaining. And then even the way our Deadpools are defeated, Peter shows up, "Hey, I'm one of you guys." That's how they're defeated. Like, it's just like a throwaway bit. Like, Deus Ex Peter shows up like, "Hey!" How does he know that would work? Don't know. But apparently all the other ones just to, like, follow his orders, not in any way set up at any point in time. We do a big fight. They all regenerate except for Nicepool, and then we just move on. Like, it's just a series of gags. And that brings us to our final bit here with the sacrifice. They run inside to try and stop this machine that Paradox created to prune universes that were going to die anyway. He just wanted to kill them faster. Nova hears about it, and she just decides she wants to take over and destroy all of them. All of it, it's just mumbo jumbo to create a scenario to have a sacrifice at the end. Paradox, what's his greater... he just wants a promotion? That's his whole motivation? Really? Nova, why is she doing this? What is happening here? Just that it's not compelling in and of itself. It just serves the story. So you get this bit where, of course, Logan wants to sacrifice himself because he doesn't have a timeline to go back to that anyone cares about. Deadpool feels he needs to do it because this is his purpose. This is where it gives meaning. Deadpool knocks out Wolverine, charges in to try and do it. When you watch it on second viewing, you realize how they're really just screwing around with the urgency here, where the whole bit of can Deadpool pull it across in time and he's going to run out of time. When you rewatch it, you realize there's like minutes of just banter and then a minute straight of him like doing jokes in the window at Wolverine, delaying it. And then right after this, we have this super urgent, "Oh man, how are we going to do this?" Where you're both trying to crack jokes that eat up time and create false urgency. But anyway, that's nitpicking. But so they build up all this tension, everything's going to fall apart. And then Wolverine swoops in to hold his hand, and through the power of friendship and holding hands and Madonna playing, they're able to pull everything together. And, you know, it's a nice little sequence where they swell the music, they montage through all the statements they made in the movie, and they add like one more line. Like, you were never the right guy until you were. And just adding a little bit to, you know, swell the emotions and pay it off as you show them holding hands with all this happening. And, you know, it's effective. It works. And you're not really thinking that they can't possibly kill them off. Like, what's the next scene after this? If they can't do that. They're not going to do that. But you still feel the moment of they make the choice to die for others because others needed it. And, so sacrifice themselves. Paradox, that weasel, lies about everything. We get our Loki cameo in here, and then they walk around the corner. They're okay. And you said one of us couldn't take it, but two of us regenerating people, we could together through the power of friendship. It's a fun little bit. It pays off nicely. Once again, thematically, it shows each of their character arcs. Each of them had a purpose. Each of them choose to be sacrificial. They do what others needed. They're competing to be the one that dies. You know, thematically it works. Character arc it works. Emotionally it works. Story mumbo jumbo, exposition dump, do a thing. Like, it's whatever. But it's a satisfying conclusion for the movie that they were making. Puts a grin on your face. And then, you know, by the end of it, they return and Deadpool joins in on, and now there's a couple extra people in Deadpool's world. His friends, his family, and Wolverine's hanging out at the dinner party with them, and X-23's there. Ends on a nice little note. So then we have our mid-credit and post-credit scene. The mid-credit, it's, you know, obviously not a scene. It's kind of interesting because it's just kind of a montage of clips from the movies, behind the scenes, interviews, all with like the most cliche Say Farewell song from that time period. That Time of Your Life came out, Good Riddance came out in the late 90s, and then all of our graduations. We go into our graduation, every graduation, like I graduated in the year 2000, my graduation, everyone else's, they did a montage. They usually forgot to clip out the first few seconds where they drop a word you're not normally supposed to say at a graduation. They left that in, and then they had a picture montage of our 4 years in high school while that song played. Once again, an inside joke for 40-year-olds of the overuse of Good Riddance, and for these movies that came out in that time period. Like, the first X-Men came out the month they graduated high school. Introduction to Hugh Jackman, Wolverine, happened the month I graduated high school. The movie we were talking about right before we graduated, X-Men, it's about to come out. So they just lean into it, even with the song choice. And it ties into what the movie is very much about, of like saying farewell. We are poking fun at Fox X-Men. We're poking fun at the merger. We're poking fun at the fact that they're failures, that they ended. We're also saying, let's give you a final send-off. Let's take all of these franchises that ended on low points, never happened, that kind of died with a whimper, and then they got pruned from the multiverse. Let's give them their last hurrah. Let's have Blade, Elektra, even Gambit gets his moment, and you put it in this big gigantic event film in the MCU, give it some significance of saving the X-Men movies so they can have a little bit longer of a role in the MCU before they get fully rebooted, whenever that happens, however that happens. And then we kind of do this montage of just showing Hugh Jackman 25 years ago filming the first X-Men when he was a nobody. He was like number 10 on their list of people they wanted to cast. It was supposed to be Dougray Scott. They offered it to Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe turned it down. Dougray Scott couldn't do it because he had to do reshoots for Mission Impossible 2. And so they go for this no-name Hugh Jackman, who obviously has gone on to become, you know, this beloved A-lister for the last 24 years. And one of the classic, iconic comic book castings that him returning for this movie is like, what? They're really doing it. And it's about to become the biggest opening ever for an R-rated movie. And so much of that is even on Hugh Jackman returning That's an event, that's special. And so then you go back and you show this clip of him from filming before the movie came out. And he's like, I was so nervous. Nobody knew who I was. They didn't trust me. And now they're building the franchise on him. And even, I think they probably should have done this, found some behind the scenes footage, but like the first X-Men is also where Kevin Feige got his start. He was like bottom of the totem pole of producer type people, but he was brought in and he had just enough influence there where this guy knows what he's doing, and he ended up getting all these promotions because of it. But Hugh Jackman and Kevin Feige started on the first X-Men. And so it felt fitting with thematically what this movie was doing of sending off the Fox X-Men, New Line, Marvel, all that, sending it off, saying goodbye, celebrating it, while also having fun. And so it's just like the right note, even with this very silly cliche song in it. Then we get our post-credit scene. It's just like people are waiting, like, what's going to happen? Are they going to have Dr. Doom walk out? I don't think this movie's never meant to be that. So having a funny joke where you get a little bit more Chris Evans and you pay it off that Johnny Storm did say all that stuff and more. It doesn't explain why Deadpool repeated it, but it absolutely did happen that he said those things. It's a funny joke. It's funny to see Captain America saying those lines, so it worked. So final thoughts. I feel like this No Way Home are just interesting films in that they really are kind of designed to work on kind of their own unique terms. They are movies designed for insiders. They are built on prior knowledge. They are built on prior emotional attachments. They're movies that build their plots around the mechanisms of doing essentially a gimmick to make these little moments for insiders. But they work on that level. They absolutely deliver the experience they're supposed to, while at the same time, if you evaluate them on fairly normal movie criteria, they do not hold up. They don't work very well. But every movie doesn't have to work on the same terms. That's the brilliant thing about art movies. There aren't really rules. Does it come together? Does it deliver the experience it's meant to deliver? And this movie absolutely does. It's the kind of movie that people leave and they're like, I watched something special. That was cool. They did it. They pulled it off. That's the way people left the theater last night. Big grin on their face. Something like, man, isn't it neat that movies can do that? That movies can make me feel that. That movies can feel like sporting events where you feel like you want to cheer at certain things that happen. That's cool. So, as for me, do I think it's a great film? That's not the way I would describe it. It's incredibly entertaining, and it does have that No Way Home magic, that No Way Home sparkle of something special for the fans. Hope you enjoyed this video. Come back over the next few days. I'll have coverage of hopefully whatever they announce at the MCU panel, at Marvel Studios panel, at Comic-Con this weekend. Got plans for X-Men rankings, all of that fun stuff. So be on the lookout for more Marvel content over the next few days, including a new Hot Takes and Hot Wings Marvel edition, talking about reacting to your Marvel hot takes while eating incredibly and increasingly hot wings. It was a ton of fun. I filmed it in front of a live audience. Great event. That's coming in the near future as well. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies.